This happened the other day, and I want to play it so you're going to understand something. I'm going to explain why they're shutting this conversation down.
Pro-criminal and overwhelmingly elected with George Soros' money, and they're a major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
I'm not sure we need to bring George Soros into this. I was going to say you get the last word, Speaker.
He paid for it. I mean, why can't we discuss the fact that millions of dollars...
I agree with Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
Okay. So it's verboten.
All right, we're going to... Okay, we're going to move on.
So, the uncomfortable scene there, where you're not allowed to mention the name, but notice how quick that Liberal correspondent was at shutting down about Soros. Why? Everybody knows Soros is paying for it. They don't want you talking about it because it all roads leads somewhere else. I'm going to go down this and I'm going to explain as we go through this video today as an introduction of what's going on, because this is the first part, which is an introduction. The second part of this, the next video that will come, will be on Serbia, but today I want to concentrate on an introduction so you get an understanding what's going on here.
کاخ سفید، واشنگتن دی سی. جان مکین از مسئولین کاخ سفید که توطئه‌های متعددی را علیه جمهوری اسلامی ایران هدایت می‌نماید. جورج سوروس سرمایه‌دار یهودی است که سردمدار استعمار فرانوین میباشد. وی با سرمایه خود و با استفاده از شعارهایی چون آزادی‌خواهی، دموکراسی و حقوق بشر طرفداران آمریکا را به حاکمیت می‌رساند. جین شار نظریه پرداز نافرمانی مدنی و تئوریسین انقلاب‌های مخملین که تألیفاتی در این موضوع دارد. وی از عوامل CIA جهت نفوذ در کشورهای مورد نظر می باشد. دیل سمیت از کارشناسان ارشد CIA در امور ایران می باشد که سالیان متمادی با گروه‌های اپوزیسیون و معاند ایرانی همکاری نزدیکی دارد. بله.
Here is an Iranian intelligence propaganda piece, but it's interesting with four names in there: Bill Smith, George Soros, Gene Sharp and John McCain. Again, the same names keep popping up. Organisations, how it's funded, how it's created, but the affiliations of how others utilise this facility. This in itself should be alarming. So I'm now going to take us to tech camps. The glorious tech camps. Well, let's go here. Let's have a look what this tech camp's doing. And that's in Mexican. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to read that. Journalists. Doesn't say. Doesn't say. Campaign amidst an outbreak of violence in Marawa City. What's this one? Civil society members from across Africa learn digital strategies to encourage civic engagement, participating in upcoming elections. NGOs, journalists. Tank Camp Kosovo. Why Kosovo? I mean, a lot of this stuff I'm going to show you is very, very relevant to what's going on. Some of these don't say what they're doing. That one doesn't. What about in Estonia? Journalists learn strategies to help increase. Ukraine. for Ukraine journalists and independent media. So tech camps are training people to become activist journalists. That's what they are. But to be honest, you don't have to take my word for it. You can listen to this guy. So let's play, shall we?
Foreign service officers are diplomats, oftentimes been in diplomacy for 20, 25, 30 years, and they understand that social media is important. They understand that technology is powerful. They understand that they need to incorporate it into their work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're comfortable with it or that they know how to do it. And so one of the programs that we built is called the Virtual Student Foreign Service. It's like a reverse internship, where we've had more than 350 very talented university students train foreign service officers how to use the tools of the 21st century and how to incorporate technology into traditional diplomatic programs. So that's one sort of gong-banging success that I'm really proud of. The second one is a program that Secretary Clinton launched in Marrakesh, Morocco in November of 2009 called Civil Society 2.0. And what we've done with Secretary Clinton's Civil Society 2.0 program is we've taken one of America's undeniable strengths, the strength of our technology and of our innovators, and we've put them to work in service of our diplomatic goals. So what we've done is we've created these things called tech camps, where over a couple days there's very intensive training of grassroots civil society organizations by American technology experts. And this is great because it allows these technology experts the opportunity to sort of give back in a way consistent with their strengths. And it helps the civil society organizations because they are more effective executing against their missions now that they're more savvy about how to harness digital tools. And to date, we've trained more than 800 civil society organizations from 50 countries around the world. This is just an unnuanced success that Secretary Clinton helped bring to the State Department.
One 800 civil society groups. Oh, hang on.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
800 civil society groups, 50 countries, activist journalists. Alec Ross,
Traditional diplomatic.
sorry, this guy, Alec Ross, was in Hillary Clinton's State Department, and he was the guy that was sent over to Ukraine in order to teach the Ukrainians, because tech camps appeared after the Arab Spring. I'll go more into the explanations of all this, but I want you to understand how they moved, how they're going to develop, the important names that people don't know. And this was one of them, Alec Ross. Here we have fostering civil societies in Belarus. Oh! And Open Society Foundations, George Soros. This was in 2019, just before the elections in Belarus. Has inspired dissidents around the world. New York Times, From Dictatorship to Democracy, Gene Sharp, Tony Benn. I'll get into him in a second, Mr. Tony Benn. The New York Times, Gene Sharp, hardly expected in his 9th decade to be mentioned in the same sentence Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, BBC News, the British Broadcasting Communists, as I would like to call them. But this is the best one. Now translated into 31 languages, Sharp's book is being read in countries from Vietnam to Venezuela. It has attained the kind of status that Karl Marx or Mao Zedong's Little Red Book once enjoyed. Sunday Times. So who is Tony Benn? Tony Benn, British politician, original name Anthony Nigel Wedgwood Benn, also called the second Viscount Stansgate by name Wedgie, born April 3rd, 1925, London, England, died March 14th, 2014. British politician, member of the Labour Party, and from the 1970s the unofficial leader of the party's radical populist left. I don't believe in the left-right program, but this guy was a real lefty. Now his MP, because he talked about it and he was disappointed, was Sir Oswald Mosley, the European Social of Oswald Mosley. Don't forget, Oswald Mosley created the fascist party in the UK, or the British Union of Fascists. First, let me pay tribute to Sir Oswald, who coined the phrase Europe a nation. So you understand the great European nation here. Because nearly 6 days after the formation of the Union back in 1948, and more than 26 years after his death in 1980, we who would subscribe to or write articles for the European action are still inspired by his philosophy. Walter Lippmann, the American journalist, author and Pulitzer Prize winning columnist, said, "The final test of a leader is that leaves behind him other men the conviction and will to carry on." Interesting too that reviewing the early successes of the British Union, Mosley addresses his brother Blackshirts, called on them to possess the character of their true revolutionary. They were fighting for nothing less than a revolution in the spirit of the British people, and they needed to have with them the character and the power to endure, to have loyalty, constancy, manhood and stability of nature. In fact, Mosley had gone further still and called upon his members of the Union movement to be European socialists. He has always denied being on the right politically, stating he was from the left. In essence, then, we have called revolutionaries and socialists, but how does this tie in with our National Party of Europe and the demand to bring about a Europe a nation? So, here we have more of Gene Sharp's book, starting in 1973. So, colour revolutions need a manual, a guidebook. Well, here's the guy that created that. This is Gene Sharp. We'll get more into this as we go on. What I'm doing is an introduction so you can see the manipulation of things that are going on. Now, let's talk about colour revolutions. Here's a list. Like I said, everything will be linked below for yourselves to look at. So we have Philippines, 86, Papua New Guinea, 88, but this is the main one, Czechoslovakia. In 1989, peaceful demonstration by students, mostly by the Charles University, was attacked by the police. Then this is the main one, which I'm going to be doing in the next instalment next week, will be about the bulldozer revolution and the importance of this one, which talks about Otpor. And it's very important we know about Otpor, because from 98 to 2004 it was Otpor. Then after 2004 it became Canvas. But it also was involved in Georgia. But I'll also show the connection between that and the State Department and the embassy and the ambassadors. I will go very much into that. But here is the other mechanism here, Pora. Black processor, Opora, Leonid Kuchma, and these were trained by a civic youth organisation opposite to Kuchma's government. Now, Kuchma is the father-in-law of one Viktor Pinchuk. Khmara, the Georgian youth resistance movement in Georgia, youth. Serving non-government organisation Otpor is linked in this. So we can look at all this. Now, the next factor of all of this is students. So we have students, we have the manual. Okay? What I'm now going to show you is evidence of the deception. 1 million Ukrainians are gathered 8th of December 2013 in the streets of Kiev to vote for resignation of the president and government in one day. So there was 1 million people in Kiev. So the population of Kiev in 2013 was 44.5 million. So 1 million people would be roughly about 0.25% of the population. Okay, so that's a guesstimate of 0.25% of the population is demanding the overthrow of a government of 44.5 million. So what about the other 43.5 million people? What are their views on the matter? Now, some would sympathise and some won't. What I'm now going to show you is something very important. This is in the Britannica. I want you to listen to this very carefully. In January 2010, Yanukovych, Tymoshenko and Yushchenko faced off in the first round of presidential polling. Yushchenko, capturing only about 5% of the vote, was eliminated, and a runoff election between Yanukovych and Tymoshenko was held on February the 7th, 2010. Yanukovych won a narrow victory by taking 48.95% of the vote to 45.4% for Tymoshenko. Although international observers found the poll to be fair, Tymoshenko denied the validity of the results, and the parliamentary bloc refused to attend Yanukovych's inauguration ceremony on February 25, 2010. Just take out the names. Just put Trump, Clinton, or the Democrats, Republicans. It's the same setup going on again, and it started in 2016. In 2010, then in 2014 we had the revolution. Here is a map of Yanukovych and Tymoshenko's voting areas. This will show you something I want you to look at. I want you to observe this map very, very carefully. All the blue areas are Yanukovych, all the red areas are Tymoshenko. Here is a map. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Of Russian native as a language. Red areas are Russian mainly speaking, and Ukrainian mainly speaking are the orange areas to dark orange. There is Kiev. Let's go back to that map. Do you see something, people? So, Yanukovych's main voting bloc is this area. But this is the other bloc that wanted to be part of Europe. But not all of them wanted to be part of Europe. But this lot was heavily wanting to be in with Russia. Now let's talk about the money. Ukraine's NATO Eastern Prize. So here we have people showing the actual manuals here. The same people in the Arab Spring. The same pictures from the Arab Spring to the Revolution of Dignity. But here we have Victoria Nuland, who's married to Robert Kagan. Victoria Nuland is very famous for that wonderful phone call that was how they were going to arrange the Ukrainian government. Robert Kagan, American historian and foreign policy commentator. Kagan, however, prefers the term liberal interventionist to describe himself. A co-founder of the neoconservative Project for the New American Century. He is a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute. Again, we have another one here, Brookings Institute. Brookings Institute are the same people behind the Russian dossier with Hillary Clinton. The Brookings Institute is connected very deeply with the Clinton and the Clinton administration. He was a US Republican president candidate as well as Democratic administrators for other. So I'll link that below. You can read about Mr. Kagan. Project for the New American Century. A neoconservative think tank based in Washington, D.C. Focuses on the United States foreign policy. Well, let's have, of the 25 people who signed PINAC's founding statement of principles, 10 went on to serve in the administration of US President George W. Bush, including Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, Erwin Stetzer, David Grodin. A key role in the Bush administration, particularly in building support for the Iraq War. Academics says as Inderjit Pamer, Philip Hammond, and Donald B. Oh, sorry, I've got something stuck in my throat here. Donald E. Abelson have said PENAC's influence on the George W. Bush administration has been exaggerated. Brookings also wrote the white paper for the Middle East thing that was thrown out by the Trump administration. The same people telling you how to do foreign policy. Well, you see, we have John McCain here and the Project for New American Century. In January 1998, John McCain signed the new infamous open letter to President Bill Clinton, cooked up by the neoconservative Project for New American Century. The letter urged the president to take a unilateral military action against Iraq. McCain and his neocon brethren were literally cheerleading for the United States to attack and overthrow the government of Iraq long before George W. Bush stole the 2000 election. Well, this is obviously the Huffington Post. The PENAC letter drips with contempt for the United Nations and international law, among other warmongers and neo-colonists who signed it were Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, John Bolton, Richard Pearl, Elliot Abrahams, William Crystal, and Zalmay Khalilzad. The only acceptable strategy, the letter states, is the one that eliminates the possibility that Iraq will be able to use or threaten to use weapons of mass destruction. This was in 1998, 5 years before the Iraq War. McCain also worked cooperatively with PENAC and Wolfowitz in attempting to overthrow the Saddam Hussein regime in Iraq. In 1998, he co-sponsored the Iraq Liberation Act, drafted by PENAC, which decreed regime change in Iraq to be US policy, and which appropriated $97 million in the US military aid to the Iraqi National Congress. And the INC was a group of anti-Hussein Iraqi militants whose purpose was to instigate a national uprising against Hussein. The connections now you can see with the Middle East and McCain and the international Iraqi National Congress is all there. So Hussein was led by Ahmed Shalhabi, the Iraqi informer whose subsequent faulty intelligence claims that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda was used to sell the Iraq war to the American public in 2004. In response to accusation that he deliberately misled the US intelligence agency, Shalhabi glibly stated, "We are heroes in error." Does this not start to make you concerned here? This organisation, PNAC, is also connected to the Brookings Institute. He's connected to people like Victoria Nuland, who is also connected to the Clintons. Follow the money, they say. National Endowment for Democracy, formed in 1983 as part of a thing to supply money and help to places. John McCain. Inside America's Meddling Machine, NED, the US-funded org interfering in elections around the globe. On June the 13th, 2018, the US government-funded National Endowment for Democracy presented its 2018 Democracy Award to a collection of Korean activists who aim to topple the communist government of North Korea. The event was timed to coincide with President Donald Trump's peace summit in Singapore with Kim Jong-un. The ceremony appeared to be the opening shot of a massive public relations effort aimed at stifling normalised relations with North Korea. So this group, who's been telling you how to do foreign policy, along with the National National Endowment Democracy, with PENAC, and all the same players in the Brookings, are now trying to stop the peace process going on with a normalisation of relations between North Korea and America. And don't forget John Bolton, who is also part of PNAC, was one of the main people that threw a spanners in the work at one point with that process. We need to take on board all these players and names. IRA statement on the passing of Senator John McCain. Now, who is the IRI? The International Republican Institute. The same people, I'll go more into this as well. This is very important stuff you need to know. Issued the following statement in response to the news of the passing of the former RII chairman, Senator McCain. He was a profound sorrow that International Republican Institute learned of the death of Senator McCain, who served as the International Republican Institute chairman for 25 years. During that period, he was a tireless advocate for human freedom around the world. His vision animated International Republican Institute's work to support democratic leaders, institutions, and networks in nearly 100 countries. Up is down, down is up. The McCain Fellowship for Freedom, bringing together a cohort of young leaders, students, young leaders. See the connections, people. Look at them. You'll see them. As Senator John McCain steps down as our International Republican Institute chairman, NDI recognises his decades of service to democracy. As he's stepping down as chairman of the International Republican Institute, the National Democratic Institute recognises his contributions to democracy around the world throughout his 25 years tenure. US Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska will assume the International Republican Institute chairmanship in McCain's place. But look who's the chairman of the National Democratic Institute. One Madeleine Albright, former Clinton Secretary of State. We'll go more into the Clintons as well, because all roads lead to the Clintons. National Endowment for Democracy, NED, NDI, RRI, CIPE and Solidarity Centre welcome increased funding from Congress. These are all your NGOs, people. Four core grantees: the National Democratic Institute, the International Republican Institute, the Solidarity Centre and the Centre for International Private Enterprise. Let's go a bit further. Now this guy, National Endowment for Democracies, William Marshall. William Marshall was president and founder of the Progressive Policy Institute, PPI, and established in 1998 as a Centre for Political Innovation in Washington, D.C. In his capacity, he has become the chief intellectual architect of the movement to modernise progressive politics for the global age. This is another person you need to know the name of and how he's connected, and they're all connected together. I'll link that below. You can read it for yourself. But here is the PPI page. Very much for Biden and everything else. So now we have the National Democratic Institute, the National Endowment for Democracy. All these groups, all these think tanks and NGOs together are trying to stop the peace. Trump's Party's War on Reality by Will Marshall. Let's click on what he has to say. The perversive joke at the heart of social reality TV is that it's totally fake, are full of cartoonish heroes and villains, contrived dramas just like pro wrestling. The Trump president in this week's Republican National Convention. It was a slickly produced, flag-bedecked exercise in mass delusion. In the squalid, everyday reality of his presidency, Donald Trump is fumbling, dissembling, chaotic mess of a leader whose MO is denying the nation's most urgent problems and deflecting blame on others for his failure to manage them effectively. Let's go. A cult-like fashion, family members and administration flunkies parroted the great leader's own talking points, such as his easily disproven claim that Trump had built the greatest economy in the world in history before the Chinese bushwhacked him with the coronavirus. In the absence of record or real economies to run on, as Barack Obama said at the Democratic Convention, Trump just makes stuff up. Really? Well, the documentation and the evidence goes against what these people are saying. But like I said, up is down and down is up. And of course, the National Endowment for Democracy, Hillary Clinton at the National Democratic Institute. What I'm trying to get through to you people is they're all one and the same. And what you're seeing on the streets of America is not a colour revolution, but a revolution of the Marxist, i.e. BLM and Antifa, which is one faction of this fractured Democratic Party. The neocons and the Hillarys and the Hillary cultists, or the Clinton cultists as I call them, is the other ones which are trying to create the colour revolution. I'll go more into that again, but the most important thing I have to do is do the Serbia one, which will be the next episode. But all roads lead to this woman, who in 2016 would not accept the loss and never has done, and has done everything in their power to disrupt, disinformation, and everything else. Don't forget the sycophants like General McChrystal, who is a Clinton acolyte, is working using PSYOPs in information operation procedures. Because remember what they said. They didn't say IIA. They said influencers. They have 3.4 million influencers. So that comes from the inform and influence activities within information operations with the PSYOP handbook, written in 2013. I'm going to show you how all of this connects, how they created from the revolution in 98 to the 2009 Civil Society 2.0, to the overthrow of Ukraine, to all the overthrows of the other countries and what they've been doing and why. This is big, because this election is, you're fighting not only the Marxists, you're fighting the neocons and the revolutionaries on that side. You're also voting the PSYOPs, which is creating voter apathy. You are a very good chance that these people from the National Democratic Institute, when they take over, there will be no Antifas, there will be no Black Lives Matters. They will be wiped off, gone. They have served their purpose in getting them back to power, and there will be no more democratic elections, people. If these people get to power, they will make sure everything is sealed off, and it will only be Democrats that will be in power, and only they will be ruling the roost. This, beyond any doubt, is the most important election in living history, and it's got to be paid attention to what these people are doing. So upon that note, until the next one, toodle pips.